When hope becomes desperation, Captain Elena Vasquez was 3 sips into her morning coffee when the universe decided to ruin her day. The communications console in her small office aboard Nexus Station began screaming with an emergency frequency that she hadn't heard in over 5 years. Her hand froze halfway to her mouth, the ceramic mug suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. The signal was weak, broken, and fading fast. Through the static and interference, she could barely make out words in Valkorian, the guttural language of their alien allies. Elena's fingers flew across the console, boosting the signal and running it through the translation matrix. What she heard made her blood turn to ice. Mayday. Stellar hope. 8 souls trapped. Life support failing. Void. Tempest approaching. Anyone. Please. Elena stared at the readout in disbelief. The Stellar Hope was a Valkorian cargo freighter that had been reported missing 3 days ago. More importantly, it was carrying 8 members of the Valkorian Elite Guard, their species' most respected warriors who served as both protectors and diplomats. These weren't just any aliens, they were Elena's friends. She grabbed her comm unit and rushed toward the command center, her boots echoing through the corridors of Nexus Station. The joint human-Valkorian facility buzzed with its usual activity. Scientists and engineers from both species working side by side on projects that would have been impossible just 10 years ago. But Elena wasn't thinking about cooperation or scientific advancement. She was thinking about Commander Zara Keth, the fierce warrior who had saved her life during the Proxima crisis, and the 7 other elite guards who had become like family to her. The command center was in chaos when Elena burst through the doors. Admiral Thane, a weathered human officer with more scars than skin, was arguing what routine. Dr. Marcus Chen, the station's chief xenobiologist. Holographic displays showed the approaching void tempest, a phenomenon that occurred when 3 different stellar winds collided in the worst possible way. The result was a cosmic hurricane that could tear apart anything in its path. "Admiral, you have to listen to me," Elena interrupted, pushing her way through the crowd of officers. "I intercepted a distress signal from the Stellar Hope. The Elite Guard is alive, but they're right in the path of the tempest." Admiral Thane's weathered face turned toward her, his eyes filled with the kind of exhaustion that came from making too many impossible decisions. "Captain Vasquez, we're already tracking 17 different ships caught in the tempest's outer edge. The void tempest isn't like regular storms. It creates spatial distortions that can crush a battlecruiser like an empty can." "Sir, these are the Elite Guard," Elena pressed. "They've saved this station more times than I can count. We can't just abandon them." Dr. Chen stepped forward, his datapad displaying readings that looked more like a death sentence than scientific data. "Elena, I understand your feelings, but look at these numbers. The tempest is generating gravitational shears of magnitude 12. The electromagnetic interference alone would fry any ship's systems in minutes. Even if we could reach them, which we can't, any rescue vessel would be destroyed before it got within 1,000 kilometers. Elena studied the swirling red mass on the holographic display. The void tempest stretched across millions of cubic kilometers, its tentacles of distorted space-time reaching out like the arms of some cosmic monster. Ships that entered never came out. It was a graveyard that even the bravest pilots avoided. "What about the experimental shuttle in Bay 7? Elena asked suddenly. "The Phantom Runner. It was designed for exactly this kind of situation." Admiral Thane shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. That ship is still in testing phase. Half its systems don't work properly, and the other half work too well. The prototype temporal shielding might protect it from the worst of the spatial distortions, but it's never been tested in actual storm conditions." "But it has been tested," Elena said quietly. "I tested it." The command center fell silent. Elena could feel every eye in the room turning toward her, filled with surprise and confusion. What they didn't know, what she had never told anyone at Nexus Station, was that before she became a communications specialist, she had been one of the military's best pilots. Elena Vasquez had flown missions through asteroid fields, navigated nebulae that could boil a ship's hull, and once brought a damaged cruiser home through a meteor storm with nothing but manual controls and pure determination. But that was before the accident, before she lost her entire squadron in the Kepler sector because she pushed too hard, flew too fast, and believed too strongly that no mission was impossible. 37 good people died because she thought she could save everyone. After that, she traded her pilot's wings for a communications console and promised herself she would never again be responsible for other people's lives. "Elena," Dr. Chen said gently, "you're a communications officer." "I used to fly," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before I came here, I was a combat pilot with the 47th Squadron. I've logged more hours in experimental craft than anyone on this station." Admiral Thane studied her with new interest. "The 47th Squadron, I remember hearing about them. They were the ones who died in the Kepler sector," Elena finished. "All except me. I was the squadron leader, and I got them all killed because I thought I could beat impossible odds." The admission hung in the air like a physical weight. Elena had never spoken about Kepler to anyone at Nexus Station. She had come here to hide from her past, to find peace in the quiet work of maintaining communications between species. But now, with 8 friends trapped in a cosmic storm, hiding no longer seemed like an option. "The Phantom Runner can handle the Tempest," Elena continued, pulling up the ship's specifications on the main display. "Its temporal shielding can protect against the gravitational distortions, and the quantum navigation system can track objects through electromagnetic interference. I can find them, and I can bring them back." Commander Torres, the station's chief of security, stepped forward with obvious skepticism. "Even if the ship could handle the storm, which is highly doubtful, how would you navigate? The Void Tempest scrambles all conventional tracking systems." Elena smiled for the first time since intercepting the distress signal. "The Stellar Hope is carrying a cargo of trilithium ore from the Vega mining colonies. Trilithium has a unique quantum signature that cuts through interference at specific frequencies. I can modify the Phantom Runner's sensors to track it. What humans do when others give up." The first thing Elena learned about flying into a Void Tempest was that all the simulations were wrong. The second thing she learned was that being wrong about a cosmic storm while inside, it was a particularly unpleasant way to discover the limitations of human engineering. The Phantom Runner shuddered as it crossed the Tempest's outer boundary, its temporal shielding flickering like a candle in hurricane winds. Elena's instruments went haywire for 3 seconds, showing readings that claimed she was simultaneously traveling backward through time and inside a black hole. Then the quantum navigation system kicked in, and suddenly she could see through the chaos. The Void Tempest wasn't just a storm. It was a maze of twisted space-time, where gravitational currents flowed like rivers of liquid reality. Elena watched streams of distorted space spiral around massive gravitational eddies, each one capable of crushing her ship into a particle smaller than an atom. But between the deadly currents, she could see corridors of relatively stable space. It was like navigating through the blood vessels of some cosmic giant, following paths that shifted and changed with each passing moment. "Come on, Trilithium," Elena muttered, adjusting the sensor array to search for the unique quantum signature of the mineral. "Show me where you are." For 20 agonizing minutes, she flew deeper into the Tempest, following her instincts and the subtle readings on her modified sensors. The Phantom Runner's hull groaned under the stress of the gravitational shears, and twice Elena had to shut down non-essential systems to prevent overloads. She was beginning to wonder if she was chasing ghosts when her sensors finally locked onto something solid. The Stellar Hope hung in space like a broken toy, its hull cracked and venting atmosphere into the void. The Valkyria freighter had been caught in one of the Tempest's gravitational eddies, spinning slowly as cosmic forces tried to tear it apart. Elena could see debris floating around the ship, pieces of hull plating and cargo containers that had been ripped away by the storm's fury. But the ship was still intact, and Elena's sensors detected 8 life signs aboard. She opened a communication channel, praying that the Stellar Hope's receivers were still functioning. Valkorian vessel Stellar Hope. This is Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the human ship Phantom Runner. Do you copy? Static filled her cockpit for several seconds. Then, through the interference, she heard a voice that made her heart leap with relief. Elena? By the 7 moons of Valkoria, is that really you? Commander Zaraketh's voice was weak but unmistakably alive. How in the depths of space did you get here? By being too stubborn to listen to reason, Elena replied, maneuvering the Phantom Runner closer to the damaged freighter. What's your status, Zara? Hull breach in sections 3 and 7. Life support is failing. 3 of my warriors are badly injured and the rest of us aren't much better. We've been rotating oxygen supplies, but we have maybe an hour left before... Zara's voice trailed off. They both knew what happened when life support failed in space. Elena studied the Stellar Hope through her viewports, assessing the damage with a pilot's eye. The ship was too badly damaged to repair in space, and even if she could fix it, there was no way it could survive the journey back through the Tempest. But the Phantom Runner was designed for exactly this kind of situation. I'm going to dock with your ship, Elena said. The Phantom Runner has medical facilities and life support for 12 people. We can get you all out of there. Elena. Zara's voice carried the weight of command, even weakened by pain and exhaustion. The docking port on the Stellar Hope is damaged, and even if you could dock, this ship is caught in a gravitational eddy. Any attempt to connect with us could trap your vessel as well. Elena looked at the swirling currents of distorted space around the Stellar Hope. Zara was right. The freighter was caught in what spacers called a gravity well, a stable point in the chaotic currents where objects could exist but couldn't escape. It was like being stuck in the eye of a hurricane made of space-time itself. But Elena hadn't survived 30 years of flying by accepting the word impossible. She activated the Phantom Runner's experimental tractor beam, a piece of technology that was still more theory than practice. The beam reached out toward the Stellar Hope, not to pull the ship free, but to create a stable bridge between the two vessels. Elena, what are you doing? Zara asked as the tractor beam locked onto her ship's hull. Something that will either save us all or kill us very quickly, Elena replied, beginning the delicate process of synchronizing the two ships' movements. I'm going to use the tractor beam to create an artificial corridor between our ships. It won't be stable for long, but it should give us enough time to get everyone across. What Elena was attempting had never been tried before, and for good reason. Using a tractor beam inside a gravitational eddy was like trying to build a bridge out of lightning. The beam flickered and wavered as competing gravitational forces tried to tear it apart, but Elena's modifications to the Phantom Runner's systems held. Zara, I need you to get everyone to the main airlock, Elena said, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought to maintain the connection. You'll have to cross in spacesuits. The corridor I'm creating won't have atmosphere, but it will have artificial gravity and protection from the worst of the gravitational shears. Elena, this is madness. Even if we could cross, 3 of my warriors are too badly injured to move. Then we carry them, Elena replied firmly. I didn't fly through a cosmic hurricane to leave anyone behind. For the next hour, Elena performed a miracle of precision flying. She held the two ships in perfect synchronization while 8 Valkorian warriors made the most dangerous journey of their lives, crossing through a tunnel of pure force held together by human stubbornness and alien technology. Commander Zaraketh was the last to cross, carrying one of her wounded warriors in her arms. Elena watched through her cameras as the fierce alien commander struggled across the artificial bridge, her movements weak from days of rationed oxygen, but her determination unshakable. As soon as the last Valkorian was aboard, Elena disengaged the tractor beam and began plotting a course back through the Tempest. But the storm had other plans. The gravitational eddy that had trapped the Stellar Hope suddenly collapsed, releasing a surge of twisted spacetime that slammed into the Phantom Runner like a cosmic fist. Elena felt her ship tumble through dimensions she couldn't name, its temporal shielding overloading as reality bent around them. Warning lights flashed across her control panel. The quantum navigation system showed impossible readings. The ship's computer calmly informed her that they were simultaneously moving at 17 times the speed of light and completely motionless. "Elena!" Zara's voice came through the intercom. "What's happening?" "Minor technical difficulty," Elena replied through gritted teeth, fighting to regain control of her ship. "We're experiencing some localized reality failure, nothing I can't handle." It was a lie, and they both knew it. The Phantom Runner was caught in a cascade failure of space-time, tumbling through layers of reality like a stone skipping across the surface of an infinite pond. Elena's instruments were useless. Her navigation system was convinced they were inside a star, and the temporal shielding was creating temporal echoes that showed her 3 different versions of the same control panel. But Elena Vasquez hadn't survived this long by relying on instruments. She closed her eyes and felt the movement of the ship, the subtle vibrations and shifts that told her which way was up and which way was home. She had flown by instinct before. When all the technology in the universe couldn't help her, she could do it again. Elena's hands moved across the controls without conscious thought, adjusting engine power and shield configurations based on nothing but intuition and 30 years of experience. She couldn't see where she was going, but she could feel it, the way a bird feels magnetic north or a fish feels the ocean current. Slowly, impossibly, the Phantom Run near began to stabilize. The temporal echoes faded, the gravitational shears eased, and Elena's instruments started showing readings that existed in the same universe as logic. Through her viewports, she could see the familiar stars of normal space. They had made it out of the void tempest. "Elena." Zara's voice was filled with something Elena had never heard from the proud warrior commander before. Awe. "How did you do that? Our sensors showed that we were caught in a temporal cascade. No ship should be able to navigate through that kind of distortion." Elena smiled, feeling the exhaustion of the past several hours finally catching up with her. "I remembered something my old flight instructor used to say. When all your instruments fail, when all your technology betrays you, when the universe itself seems determined to kill you, there's still one thing you can rely on." "What's that?" "The fact that you're human," Elena said, "and humans don't give up. Ever." 3 hours later, the Phantom Runner limped into Nexus Station's docking bay, its hull scarred by gravitational forces that shouldn't exist, and its engines held together by Elena's refusal to accept defeat. The medical team was waiting, along with Admiral Thane, Dr. Chen, and half the station's crew. Elena watched as the wounded Valkorians were taken to the medical bay, their injuries serious but treatable. Commander Zara Keth paused at the airlock, looking back at the human pilot who had risked everything to save her and her warriors. "Elena," the alien commander said formally, "the elite guard owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You flew into certain death to save us. Why?" Elena considered the question, thinking about Kepler, about guilt and redemption, about the 37 people she couldn't save, and the 8 she could. Finally, she smiled. "Because that's what humans do," she said simply. "When everyone else gives up, when the odds are impossible, when the universe itself says no, we say yes anyway. We don't abandon our friends, no matter what it costs us." Zara nodded slowly, understanding passing between 2 warriors from different species who shared the same values. Then the galaxy is fortunate to have humans in it. As the station celebrated the impossible rescue, Elena found herself in Admiral Thane's office, facing a conversation she had dreaded for 3 years. "So," the Admiral said, settling behind his desk. "Combat pilot, 47th Squadron. The Kepler sector incident. I've read the files, Elena. All of them." Elena tensed, waiting for the questions about her past, the judgment, the inevitable transfer to a posting where her history wouldn't be a liability. Instead, Admiral Thane smiled. "Congratulations, Captain. You've just proven that the 47th Squadron's reputation for achieving the impossible was well earned. How would you feel about returning to active flight status?" Elena looked out the office window at the stars beyond, at the infinite possibilities that waited in the darkness between worlds. For 3 years, she had hidden from her past, telling herself that she wasn't meant to fly, that the risks were too great, that she would only get more people killed. But today, she had learned something important. The past couldn't be changed, and guilt was a poor substitute for purpose. She had been given a gift, the ability to go where others couldn't, to achieve what others deem it impossible. It wasn't a burden to be hidden away. It was a responsibility to be embraced. "I'd like that very much, sir," Elena said. "After all, someone has to be ready for the next impossible mission." Admiral Thane chuckled. "Something tells me that with humans like you around, there will always be another impossible mission. And somehow, that doesn't worry me at all." Outside the window, the stars waited patiently for the next human who would refuse to accept that something couldn't be done.